The narrative begins with an 87-year-old man named George who reflects on the profound weight of small lies, the kind of deceptions we maintain not to hurt others, but to protect our own egos and maintain a facade of strength. For 43 years, George told his wife Elena that he had no regrets about dropping out of college, repeatedly dismissing the topic with a casual, "I did all right." However, the script explores the pivotal moment on a Thursday afternoon when something inside him finally broke, leading him to admit that he actually regretted it every single day of his life. This admission was earth-shattering, not because of the degree itself, but because it exposed the 4 decades of managed fiction they had lived within. George realizes that by pretending he wasn't hurting, he had effectively robbed himself of the chance to fix his mistake and, more importantly, robbed his wife of the opportunity to truly know him and support him. This part of the script must emphasize that these little lies, the "I'm fine," the "it's not a big deal," the "I don't need help," eventually calcify and become impenetrable walls between us and the people we love the most. George's realization is a haunting reminder that we often build these prisons of pride under the guise of being independent or not being a burden, yet the ultimate cost is a life lived in emotional isolation. The script delves into the psychological mechanics of why we choose the safety of a lie over the vulnerability of the truth, highlighting that, while a lie might keep the peace for a moment, it slowly erodes the foundation of intimacy. George looks back at 43 years of dancing around the truth and laments the wasted time, urging the listener to recognize that being known by another person is the only thing that makes the struggle of life bearable. This section concludes by setting the stage for a deeper investigation into how these patterns of dishonesty aren't just limited to marriage, but extend into every facet of our professional and social lives, often leaving us as strangers even to those we see every day, much like the surface-level relationship George had with his longtime colleague Frank. The second part of the script expands on the tragedy of missed connections by telling the story of Frank, a man George worked with for over 22 years. They shared lunches, talked about sports, weather, and mundane household details. Yet after Frank's sudden death, George realized he never actually knew the man behind the pleasantries. Frank's daughter revealed that her father always felt George was the only person he felt comfortable around, yet he carried secrets and unsaid thoughts to his grave. This segment serves as a powerful meditation on how we settle for the surface version of people, fearing that if we dig deeper or share our own reality, we might become a burden or appear weak. The script then transitions into a deeply emotional encounter between George and his 59-year-old son, David. In a rare moment of radical honesty, David confesses that his refusal to join the family business decades ago wasn't because he wanted his own path, as he had originally claimed, but because he was terrified of not being good enough and disappointing his father. This revelation is a cornerstone of the narrative, showing how a single lie told out of fear can sit between a parent and child for 30 years, creating a subtle but persistent distance. When George assures his son that he could never be a disappointment, the relief is palpable, and they spend 3 hours finally talking about real fears and regrets. This section emphasizes that the lies we tell to protect ourselves actually end up isolating us from our children and our legacy. It challenges the audience to consider what misunderstandings are currently sitting between them and their family members, suggesting that the lightness George felt after that conversation is only accessible through the doorway of painful, honest vulnerability. By breaking the cycle of performance, George and David finally find the connection they had both been craving for decades, proving that it is never too late to tell the truth, even if the truth is simply admitting that you were scared. In the third segment, the script focuses on the transformation of George and Elena's marriage during their final years together. After the initial breakthrough on the porch, they made a conscious decision to move away from managed fiction and toward everyday honesty. This didn't mean making grand, dramatic confessions every day, but rather sharing the smaller truths that are often swallowed to keep the peace. George describes how they started saying things like, "I'm scared about this doctor's appointment," "I feel lonely even when you're in the room," or "I'm angry about what your sister said." This part of the script must highlight that this level of honesty is often uncomfortable and can lead to arguments, but it is real, and real is always superior to a carefully managed lie. George argues that pride kills more relationships than betrayal ever could, because pride prevents us from being seen as needy, weak, or less than. The script contrasts this with the heartbreaking reality of people in nursing homes, like George's neighbor Walter, who sits alone watching families pass by his window. Walter tells everyone he understands his kids are busy and that he doesn't want to be a burden, but his face betrays a crushing loneliness. This section serves as a critique of the "I don't want to be a burden" mentality, framing it as a form of dishonest pride that prevents children from knowing how to love their parents. The script encourages the audience to reject the polished version of their lives, the version that is always handling it, and instead present the version that is struggling, hurting, or confused. It posits that the people who love us deserve the actual truth, not the version we think will make their lives easier. By sharing our struggles, we give others the gift of being able to help us, which is a fundamental human need. The script here builds a strong case for vulnerability as a form of courage rather than a sign of weakness, and sets the stage for the final philosophical conclusion of the message. The final part of the script reaches a crescendo as George reflects on his current life at 87, where he no longer has time for pretending. He realizes that every conversation could be his last, which has stripped away his fear of being judged or misunderstood. This segment details a conversation with his youngest daughter, who called him in a state of total despair, feeling like a failure. Instead of offering the typical "you're fine" or "you're being dramatic," George told her the radical truth. "I've felt that way too many times, it's terrible, and I'm sorry." This honesty didn't fix her problems, but it saved her because she no longer felt alone in her failure. The script concludes by summarizing the ultimate lesson: humans are not built to be alone, we are built for shared struggle and the relief of being known and still loved. George admits that he wasted so many years drowning while pretending he was swimming, and the cost was felt by his wife, his kids, and his friends. He urges the audience to consider letting go of their own small lies, starting with being honest with themselves and then with those who matter most. This part of the script must be an urgent emotional call to action. Stop performing being fine and just be whatever you actually are: messy, uncertain, and human. He recommends foundational texts like Brené Brown's The Gifts of Imperfection, Pema Chodron's When Things Fall Apart, and Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning to help the audience navigate this difficult journey toward authenticity. The script ends on a note of hope, suggesting that while the truth might be messy and painful, it is the only path to a life that is truly beautiful and connected. George's final words are a reminder that being known is worth every bit of the risk of being hurt, and that the prison of pride can only be escaped by the simple, terrifying act of saying what is actually true. This final 500-word block serves as a powerful emotional anchor, leaving the listener with the realization that their time is limited and their honesty is the greatest gift they can give to themselves and the world.